Paymon who?
Mata Heyday.
Paymon Lata Heyday. Who is he?
Never paid taxes in 30 years. Fought the U.S. tax court and won.
See, I believe our rights come from God, not from government. Welcome, everyone, to Freedom Law School's Freedom Hour on this December 9, 2025. I'm Paymon Motahede, the president of Freedom Law School. And in this presentation, we will cover the topic of DOGE Insider Bombshell that the IRS Compliance Slavery Division is in complete chaos behind the closed doors that you don't get to see. We'll have these doors opened up because IRS Slavery Division Compliance told that themselves to this DOGE insider who's there to head up, they trying to revitalize and update the IRS's broken computer systems. If you have not been to Freedom Law School's website, remember, go to freedomlawschool.org to be free of income taxes and payroll corporate taxes for the rest of your life, legally and safely. Again, freedomlawschool.org. So let's see. The gentleman is right here being interviewed, okay? Sam Corcos with Chris Williamson. This came out just in October. But we just went through some of the best parts of this. I'm going to play for you this interview that I'm going to show you the clip. Then I'm going to give you more commentary and show you more clips of this over 2-hour interview. The best parts, I've been chiseled them down for you to see. So here we go to revelations about the IRS.
I had a lot of friends reach out to me from the administration saying that they really needed help really looking into IRS modernization. It's one of the worst managed IT projects in the government. I think maybe second only to the VA's attempt at implementing an electronic health record system. It's about $15 billion over budget. It was actually started right around the time I was born, and it's still ongoing. It's still 5 years away. It was 5 years away in 1991. It's still 5 years away.
Yeah. So, yes, IRS modernization has been going on even before its time in 1980s in Step 3 on our website of the 7 steps to free yourself of the IRS. We cover this issue in more detail, how IRS is based upon deception and fraud. Okay, they deceive you to believe they're strong when they're actually weak. Okay, so yes, since 1980s, IRS has been trying to update, modernize their computer systems, have been unable to do so repeatedly. That's, again, I'll bring it to you later on. Let's go to the next clip of what Sam says now after he introduced himself to you guys. $15 billion over budget the last time. Here we go.
So we at the IRS, the policy for a long time has been we don't do technical interviews. We just do resume review. So if you were to apply and you just wrote the word Java on your resume, we will just assume that you know how to do this.
Isn't that crazy? You just, to be hired by IRS to do a job, you write in your application, your resume that you do something, and they don't check to see if you actually are telling the truth. Do you actually know that computer program at all or not? They just assume you're good, and obviously that's false. Okay, people lie, and when you give the job, oh well, you're already in. You can't get rid of you, as you'll see how difficult it is to get rid of IRS employees in just a minute in the federal government.
The challenge, though, and I'll just walk you through the process why this is such a problem. At the IRS, we have 6 job openings, right? And as a point of comparison, if you wanted to hire somebody, you would write up the job description. This is what you do. You post it. You interview those people. You decide if you want them. You hire them or you don't hire them. It's not like that here. So let's say you want an engineer who specifically does this one thing. Well, you send it to the HR team. They decide if it matches one of the existing, they call them PDs, position descriptions, I think. If it matches one of the existing approved PDs, which in the case of our current hiring pipeline, many of them did not. Mm-hmm. And so they ended up getting posted with some fairly generic thing. But by the time you've written the position description, the engineers are no longer in the loop on this process. So it gets handed off to a mid-level person in HR. They decide if your job description is accurate or not. They then post it. You get a bunch of people apply. The mid-level in HR decides whether that person is qualified. The engineer is not in this loop at all, by the way.
Yeah, the HR person does not have technical capability. They can't assess whether or not this person can actually write in Java or whatever.
They just look at a resume. They make the determination. Is this person qualified for this role? And then eventually, this person, the engineer, will finally get like a packet of PDFs to review. It's like, here's 10 people that we think are qualified for this role.
Okay. Let's go next spot about this story of hiring people incompetence.
And I said, okay, well, you're going to have to figure out how to do this without any of those things because you can't fire the people who are not good. You just can't. It's not.
Why?
Well, this is a whole long conversation about civil service and what it means. There is a reason why it exists, and we have to go back to like 1880 to explain why this exists. And it exists for reasons that make sense. We may be at a point where we've over-indexed, but back in the day, this would have been like Andrew Jackson era, they used to call it the spoils system, where when your party would win an election, you would fire basically the whole government, and you would install all of your buddies. And there was a lack of continuity. So like major government functions would just stop working because we have these new people in who don't know how any of these things work. They would make a whole bunch of money, and then they would leave when they lose the next election. So this is not good. So the civil service reforms, I think it was like 1883, they created this concept of like a permanent civil service where there's some class of people who are apolitical, who you cannot just willy-nilly fire all these people just because you won an election. They have certain protections, which I think is generally a good thing because you do get continuity of service for these functions.
Yeah. You get continuity of service, but the dead wood stays around, and more dead wood on top of more dead wood that produces nothing. And this stink gets worse and rotten and continues to get more rotten. That's the background. I'm going to get the good stuff to you in just a little bit, okay? Here's a couple more interesting clips before we get
So the most
there.
common way that I've heard from inside of government, people have been there for a long time, the most common way to get a poor performer off your team is to promote them. Yeah. Yeah, this is absolutely ubiquitous. Like, everyone does this.
You pass the parcel up.
Yeah, just like give them a promotion, move them to another team, and we can keep this.
Is that unbelievable or what? You cannot practically fire anybody at the federal government. The most incompetent person, druggie, alcoholic, comes to work late, doesn't come for days at a time, insults people, destroys files by accident or incompetence or stupidity. Okay, whatever. Think about worse things. You can't get rid of them. So what can you do? You cannot demote them either. You have to promote them some other spot to get rid of them in your area. You just pass the incompetent person to another part of the government organization to hurt this other part, but you're free of that guy who's bad. That's how bad the system is with the federal government, IRS more particularly. Here we go, here's more.
You ask very basic questions about their role, and they can't even answer the simplest questions. Like if your job is you're the engineer responsible for data integrity, and I ask you a basic question of like, okay, so how does data go from here to here? And they go, oh, I don't know. We should ask so-and-so. It's like, okay, is that just your answer for everything? Like what do you actually do other than set up meetings. There's a really good book. Do you ever read the book Bullshit Jobs?
No, but I have an idea about what it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And because you can't really fire these people, because you can't really give them negative performance reviews, they're just sort of there. As like maybe a data point, at most software companies that I've worked at or had exposure to, the ratio of engineers to non-engineers within like a product design engineering function is something like 5 engineers to every 1 non-engineer. Or if you're like a really tech-heavy company, it might be 10 to 1. We're basically the inverse of that. It's like 1 to 10. There are so many people whose job it is to like manage managers of contracts of managers. There are some really good people, but it is not the majority.
Isn't that crazy? You have like 10 people to manage one guy that actually is supposed to do the job, assuming the IRS hired someone that can do the job. The guy claims he could do job on his resume, but he doesn't know how to do the job. And there's 10 people supervising him not being able to do the job. You get the picture of this is the IRS. Nothing in the private company you work for at all whatsoever, right? It gets worse. Here's more.
The interesting challenge about building software in the government, that my vantage point is a little bit skewed because the IRS is basically a technology company. And a lot of other government organizations, the technology is very much a secondary consideration for them. But for the IRS, almost everything we do ultimately is downstream of technology. If you want to do enforcement of tax, you have to use computers to figure out who is non-compliant. If you want to pull up somebody's tax,
right? They must use computers. They don't do one-on-one checking on you. They don't do that. They use the computers to organize things and go forward with anything, right? Especially enforcement, right? Here we go.
Information when you're on the phone with them for customer service to resolve an issue, you need the IT system to be good in order to do that. Virtually everything we do is based on IT systems. So a lot of our systems are internally built. A lot of other systems are built with vendors, and these vendors are, I think the biggest challenge you have is there's this core incentive misalignment issue that you have with the vendors, where because the people making the decisions on whether to sign a contract or not, it's not their money. You have this very large budget. This is one of the other, I'm not sure I would call it a misconception, but it's commonly said. People say, oh, the budgets are so tight. I can tell you firsthand, especially within IT at the IRS, the budgets are not tight. We spend so much money on these things, but nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention. We will gladly spend hundreds of millions of dollars with some vendor to build a thing over the next 5 years, but we won't pay our engineers slightly more money because of some weird statutory thing where you can't compensate engineers at even close to market rates once you reach a certain threshold. So I'll give you like a very specific example that I'm dealing with right now.
Of course, he gives an example, but waste and fraud that you're hearing, it actually gets worse. Hear this one about the craziness they got.
There's a vendor that we wanted to work with to build a particular system. And
when you say vendor, what do you mean?
A vendor is like Accenture, Deloitte, Booz Allen Hamilton, Leidos, Palantir. There's like a whole list of companies that are contractors that work commonly with the government. I'm sure there are thousands of them, but there are some that are bigger and more well-known than others. I think Booz Allen Hamilton gets something like 97% of their revenue from the government. Like they are like one of the quintessential vendors. One of these that I'm talking to now, there was a previous vendor that we were using, and they were really taking advantage of the government on pricing. And so I talked to one of the new vendors and said, can you do this for us, and how much would you charge? And it was a much lower rate. I think it was something like $2 million a year is what they offered. And I said, okay, great, but that's the price, right? I just want to make sure that that's going to be the price that we pay. They said, yep, we're not like those other guys. It's $2 million, and there's a couple other projects they're working on as well. The first 6 months go really well. Great. Then the contract comes up for a renegotiation. And now they want $100 million a year. And I'm asking them, I thought we talked about $2 million for this, $250,000 for that. It's like, oh, that was our pilot pricing. It's like, if I had known that you were going to raise your price arbitrarily by 20x for no reason whatsoever, I would not have agreed to this. But now we're in a position where we can't just stop, because now they're in our systems. And so now there's going to have to be this whole, we're either going to come to terms with like a more reasonable price, or we're going to have to find a new one.
See? Thieves and crooks are ripping off the system. This is not just the IRS. The entire federal government is that way. State governments are much better, but they've got corruption and waste in them as well. These thieves are getting rich off your hard-earned money, going from $2 million to $100 million. Is that crazy or what? But this is system-wide, okay? Well, they change one thief, one crook ripping off the American people, to another thief and crook, and that's just the norm with your money, folks. Here we go. Here's more.
I think there's one thing that it is always missing and will always miss, and this is just I would describe it as an assumption that you have to make when you're thinking about designing any system, and it's kind of how we got here to begin with, which is there is no feedback loop when it's the government. It's kind of like why FDR was so opposed to public sector unions, is because in the private sector, you can unionize, but if you demand too much from the company, eventually the company will just die. But the government won't. You can just demand more. You can just work less. There is no counterbalance to the unions in the public sector. You can just always say yes and nothing happens. The debt just gets larger. The amount of money just goes up. And there is no force that pushes against it. So the assumption that you always have to make, and why we end up with so many of these rules around personnel, around contracts, is that there is no natural incentive structure that prevents government from doing bad things.
I think it doesn't surprise me that this is the sort of challenge that people are facing. But also, only 16% of Americans trust the federal government. That was some Pew study from 2023, I think. Is that surprising to you, given that what you've seen from the inside? I don't know what trusting the government means, but you would trust somebody to look after your dog. Okay, so what are the things that they need? Well, they need to be driven. They need to be competent. They need to be conscientious and aware. They need to have the skill set that's required to be able to look after a dog. They need to not be malicious against dogs. So there's, the fraud, waste, abuse, like insider trade, all of those things. There's a number of different levels that you need to get through in order to be able to think, I trust this person. And not all of them are malicious, and not all of them are competence-based. But 16% of Americans trust the federal government. Doesn't seem surprising.
Well, of course. There are still 16% of Americans who have been deceived and ignorant to trust this corrupt entity, wasteful entity that the federal government has become over the last 200 years or so. Okay, now, with that background, of incompetence, of waste, they don't hire competent people, okay? They got 10 people watching one person actually supposedly doing the work. Okay, they waste the money on these contractors who don't know what they're doing. They're ripping off the government. They can't update the computer systems in over 40 years, from 85 to 2025. They have not updated the system of the IRS. They've tried again and again and failed because of all this. And Now comes the interesting part, because the Compliance Division, that's the division of the IRS that is supposed to keep you as a slave afraid of the IRS. Whoa! Be a slave, file income tax. Otherwise you go to prison. We take everything you got. Whoa! Be afraid. Audits, collections, whatever, all that stuff is them. They called Sam for help. And look at this. This is very eye-opening. I left the best for last for you guys. Here we go.
In the IRS. Like, the compliance team told me early on they really need help with their software systems. They said we have
they really need help. Got that? The compliance. Going after people, whether you don't file a tax return, don't pay, okay, whatever. They really need help. Wow. Of all the parts of the IRS, that's got to be the worst, because you are free. You could have stopped filing and paying income tax a long time ago. You just didn't know the IRS is so weak. The media, the accountants, CPAs who make money off of you filing tax returns, they deceived you to believe you're weak, and the IRS will get you if you don't file a tax return, if you don't pay income tax. That's why you've been so afraid. But it's not necessary for you to be afraid, because you have nothing to be afraid of. Look at what the Compliance Division asks him to do, what they tell him. Okay?
at least 60 different systems that do not communicate with each other at all. I assume this was an exaggeration. I spent 2 full days now at the compliance facility just watching how these systems work. They are, if anything, they're underestimating how many of these systems there are. In software, when you're building these types of systems, one of the just core principles is you want to have a single source of truth for any piece of data. This is foundational. Sometimes you might have 2 sources of truth if you're doing like a really messy migration, or you have some caching layer and you're kind of balancing those 2. But really, 1 is the goal. As of the last count, which I think is last week, the IRS has about 108 competing sources of truth. I'm not talking about data sources. This is like the most complex Rube Goldberg I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. The people who try to enforce a tax on you, force you, twist you, scare you, hurt you, they have over 100 different computer systems with information on them, and they don't talk to each other. They do not harmonize their information, each of them, with each other. So this computer system says something else about you. This other one has different information. This other one, different information. This one, nothing. That one, nothing. That one, wrong information. It's just crazy. It's total chaos. That's why they asked Sam to help them to put these systems that have all this false, contradictory information into one system that it's all integrated. Of course, you cannot do that with this whole background of mess where you cannot get rid of bad people. You have to promote them someplace else to get rid of them. At the end, the people, the managers, none of them are programmers. That's right. The people, I didn't put this clip, I'll put added later on. The people at the IRS that are in charge of the coding, computer coding, none of them are coders. I mean, it's like someone in charge of, electrical work, building a building. He's not an electrician. He's a cement foundation. He doesn't know anything about electrical jobs. Well, we put him in charge of doing cement work, not supervising electronic work. But they have these incompetent people supervising. So you don't need to be afraid for the IRS, folks. That is the great news that you all should be pretty excited about. Now, what I'm going to show you, the answer is this for you. You don't need to be afraid, my friends. I have not filed and paid income tax for over 30 years, openly. I've been under criminal investigation and others investigations since 1994. They've never been able to put me in prison. Okay, never filed and paid them anything. I'm openly teaching you to do the same legally and safely like myself. So, of course, they want to shut me up not to tell you the truth because they're afraid you'll wake up and be a free man or woman, not a slave. Sorry about that for them because you just heard the truth. All you gotta do is to stop being a slave, be free, keep all your paycheck, okay? All your money, to stop filing income tax. Go to our website, freedomlawschool.org, okay? And then there you'll see the truth of how you can take the 7 steps to free yourself, to regain your power and freedom, and never again voluntarily pay the Washington, D.C. swamp safely and legally guaranteed. So when you go there, by the way, you can go stop income tax withholding on your paycheck by going to on the right, on the top center of our website. Click on that free yourself from tax withholding. Boom, there it is, a page on how you can stop your employer from stealing from your paycheck supposed income taxes and sending it to the IRS. Your employer is your enemy, practically. Yes, if he doesn't steal your money out of your paycheck, you'll be free. That's right. So employers, stop stealing from employees' paycheck. Don't require them to fill out W-4 forms. Don't send to the IRS a W-2 at the end of the year. Tell them that you paid them taxable income because you did not. That money is not taxable. Do not send 1099 forms to the IRS that you paid somebody else money, Mr. Employer, business owner. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind. Now, after all that, you see first the law. At our website, freedomlawschool.org, we show you the law that based on the official legal websites of the U.S. government, no law requires 99% of Americans to file and pay income taxes. It's right there. You can click on this brown golden stuff, the brochure, explains it to you, or watch this 10-minute video and a few extra videos right there. It's all there for you to see very easily. Step 2 is you got to stop putting a rope around your neck with the 1040 form you sign every year under oath. You give it to the IRS, and when you sign that 1040 form, you confess under oath that you owe the IRS money, and that is how you give the IRS the power to rape you with audits, empty your bank accounts, take your crypto, steal your property, put you in prison. All was done by you. So you stop doing that. And then next thing, you got to realize IRS is based on bluff. I just showed you. IRS is bluff. They're a bunch of incompetent, disorganized, dysfunctional nincompoops. Okay? So don't be afraid of them as I just showed you, because you've been brainwashed all your life to be afraid of the IRS, that you got to file an income tax when you do not have to file an income tax. Okay? So realize this deception in step 3 of Freedom Law School's website. And step 4, you realize that, folks, I have beaten this lizard called the IRS. They are not a Godzilla they pretend to be, okay? None of my students have gone to prison. None of them have lost any money to the IRS with the levies or seizure of the property, as long as they came to Freedom Law School, stayed with me, okay? They come to me clean and stay. It's very simple. So then, and then here we go. What's the next step? Step 5, okay? You don't have to be afraid of them, okay? And you don't have to pay tribute to the IRS. Just write your congressman. Ask them to show you if you're wrong, and they never can. We've done petitions to Congress about this income tax issue. They've never shown us to be wrong. That's proof that we are right. And the next, you can choose to get together like this great men, America's founding fathers. Join hands together. And there's power in that when you get together. Rather than individuals, come together, and we can beat this enemy that federal government has become of the American people. And you can restore freedom in America by joining the Restore Freedom Plan and get a 100% guarantee. You will not go to prison. I will do all the legal work for you, okay? And we have attorneys, everything, and if they take your money, we'll give your money back too. You have zero risk. That's right, zero risk to you. Only guaranteed way to get 100% zero risk with the IRS is the Join Restore Freedom Plan. Not your incompetent accountant, CPA, bookkeeper, tax attorney who claims to know here the Internal Revenue Code, the federal tax law. He doesn't know this. Over 10,000 pages of gobbledygook, tiny tissue-thin nonsense that doesn't apply to you unless you drill oil, unless you import something into America. With those few exceptions, it's not about you. You can fire your CPA, your incompetent tax attorney. They were not taught about the law in accounting school. They were taught to better make you a slave. Fire him. You don't need him. And last but not least, all you gotta do is to be a modern-day American patriot, Paul Revere. Tell American people, your friends, neighbors, co-workers, family members, the truth about the law. Well, I just showed you on our website, freedomlawschool.org, and have them be free. Have them become prosperous. America and our families will be great once again. We can America truly great again if you just open your mouth and tell them, contact us. We'll send you a Restore Freedom brochure or Fast Track Your Success brochure. 12 pages of truth. Everything is the same inside, just a different front cover. 50,000 reward. Anybody can show us wrong about anything legal in these brochures, okay? Or have them go to our website and text it. Email it to your friends, our information. Give them a chance to live free, and we'll pay you. So the freedom that you want is in your hands. All I can do is to love you and provide this information for you. This immigrant from Iran who came to America to live free, I found freedom for me, but for you, I can just give it to you, but you're the one that has to accept it. Listen to it, understand it, and do it. So as you drive to and from work every single day, watch our videos on our 7 steps at freedomlawschool.org. Watch the road, play on your smartphone, the videos, watch the road and listen to the videos. Then at lunch or dinner, watch them and listen at the same time. Okay? Do it every day. That's right, every day. You're going to see it, hear it, and say, oh, this was so easy. It's like the movie Matrix. Remember movie Matrix? They have Neo on there. What does he do? He's got this thing in the back of his head, and he's been programmed with Kung Fu. His eyes open up after a while and says, I know Kung Fu. Let's go do it. He does all this Kung Fu stuff, right? Well, your Kung Fu is to listen to our website videos and read it, and you will be free, brothers and sisters. So with that, I give you my love, and I encourage you to seek the truth, and the truth will set you free at freedomlawschool.org.